possibility of Canadian power has been kind of a holy grail in this state for something like 30 or 40 years. If it's still a good solution, I think there's much to be said for finding a way to do it. In addition, as you know, New York City has been increasing in population every year, more than probably double the population of Kingston, about 40,000 a year. And we don't know if this pace is going to continue, but people's predictions are based on so many factors that the predictability of demand seems to be very difficult to do. So some people focus on the solar power being the solution. Others talk about that it's not the amount of power, but how to get it to the city, etc., and so on. And the bottom line is that the scoping document has to contain some kind of analysis, bringing in all those factors: the economic, the demographic, the nature of New York City, what's likely to happen in new energy, our desires, the state energy plan, and various other things. It's clearly a very complex analysis and requires a lot of research and work. The second thing that has been said about this project that I think is important is, of course, the environmental impact. And I only mention this because nobody else has yet. But apparently, projects using direct current are quite numerous in other continents and places. And by now, there should be quite a record of what the environmental consequences are of these projects. And I would like to see part of what the Energy Department is going to do, a real search of the literature, both of the projects all over the world that use direct current and studies about the environmental consequences. I think that's pretty important. And third and finally, this cable is kind of it's a complex thing in terms that, as you know, it seems sort of free in that it uses the bottom of a body of water which is invisible, and the consequences of doing that kind of always seem to come up over time, and the question is who should be responsible for those consequences. Looking at, there was something about when cable was laid after the Civil War to Europe, between Europe and the United States, and the history of that was fascinating. And as you know, some of the early cables were rather primitive and broke, and et cetera, and there's a huge, and there are still environmental consequences of them finding pieces of cable in various places. So I think it's important that part of the indirect cost of this project would be to include all the possibilities. If, for instance, the cable is disturbed by dredging, what are the consequences of that? Who shall pay? Does that go to court for 10 years? Or is it clear from the contract at the very beginning who's responsible financially? There's things like, not only the dredging, but cable and other forms of cable displaced cable disturbance, but really the interruption of the power for whatever reason. We tend to get dependent on and take for granted things that perhaps we shouldn't. And it seems to me, all things being equal, that it's better to have more sources of power and projects that provide power, as long as I don't have to pay for it. And the Blackstone Group, which is or was connected, is not lacking in financial capacity and an ability to calculate risk. And if they want to take a bet on something which is a good form of insurance for our society, economic, etc., I think it's certainly worth looking at, as long as the contract makes sure that it's not a free ride for the developer. Thank you very much.
Getty, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Getty is the last person who has signed up, and so now it's open mic. Anybody who would like to contribute? Yes, ma'am. Please come to the mic and tell us your name.
June Sanderson, live in the town of Clinton, 20 minutes from here. And I'm so happy I came to hear more than I would be reading in the newspaper. My initial impression of this is renewable, hidden, not disturbing the landscape, wonderful. More issues came up, but I'm going to direct my comments, which might not on the surface be related, but we care about it. And it relates to what Senator Boniak mentioned, was utility rates, specifically electricity rates. Can you imagine how we felt here in the Hudson Valley when Central Hudson increased their rates because of conservation? That gets right down to the issue that we all care about. And it just isn't fair. On the other hand, the good part of what we're here tonight about is that we're not in China, and we do care about input, and we do care about the environment, and there are hints from the speakers of unintended consequences. So you've seen both views from me, and let's say almost everyone here is grateful for Central Hudson relatively low rates, but if you don't encourage conservation, we're going the wrong direction. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else like to speak? Yes, sir. And then the lady behind you, I believe.